Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and I know that everybody's talking about how AI is shaking up so many different industries, but I would argue that it is making so many more industries efficient, more productive, more accurate, and better for all of us, not only as business owners, but also as customers. And that's why today I'm so excited for you to meet a guest whose business is rooted in technology, but it's all with the view of enhancing our ability to collect revenue in order to serve our customers better, to flag potential problems even before they arise. I'm so excited for all of us to learn from our guest. Her name is Sandra Bustos. Sandra is the founder and CEO of Meshly, which is the real-time trust layer for go-to-market in finance systems. She's a lifelong builder and she's a natural dot connector, and she spent the last decade leading go-to-market and customer success at TalkDesk, Autodesk, and AirKit before founding Meshly to help finance leaders capture revenue faster and with more confidence. I'm excited for all of you to hear about her solution, how it works, and most importantly, behind most of our products and services, why she's lined it up and developed it and deployed it the way that she has, because this is a real life business problem that plagues every single business, no matter what your size is. So I'm excited about this one. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Sandra Bustos. All right, Sandra, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian. Nice to be here.
Heck yes, I'm excited about what you've built, but before we dive straight into that and I get to geek out with you on all the cool things you're developing, I want you to take us beyond the bio. Who's Sandra? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Florida, and I actually moved out here to the Bay Area and San Francisco initially, thinking I was going to stay in clean energy. So I moved out here for nonprofit work and quickly got exposed to the ecosystem and just all the cool technology that was emerging. So about 10 years ago, I shifted into tech. And since then, I've been primarily in go-to-market teams and seeing I considered myself a ultimate dot connector. And so I think landing on Meshly's problem was just kind of a natural segue from always trying to spot where the white space is in the different companies I've worked with and the different customers I've helped.
Yeah, I love that. And I obviously teased Meshly just a little bit, but Sandra, there's nobody better than you on planet Earth to introduce us to Meshly. Walk us through what Meshly is, how that thought process and those experiences led to it, and really intentionally and strategically about how you've set it up.
Absolutely. So I want to start with the problem we're trying to solve. So go-to-market and finance systems don't speak the same language. Think about your CRM, like your Salesforce or HubSpot, where your contracts live, your billing, and then perhaps, your general ledger, which is like the source of all truth. And so Meshly's goal is to build the Google Translate for these systems. Today's world, that mapping is inconsistent, it's error prone, and it requires a lot of manual duct tape. Even if you have automations, those automations are only as good as long as everything stays static and there's no change. Otherwise, those automations, break. And so the result of this disconnect between systems is revenue leakage, delayed closed and reportings, missed EBITDA targets, and financial teams stuck in manual reconciliation instead of strategy. So Meshly's goal is really to tackle the systemic problem that's not just a QA problem, but it's really a trust problem between teams and systems.
Yeah, and when you talk about that, I think that we're at such an exciting point in the future, in history, in technology, and all of these things, because you're right. Historically, we've always talked about automations, and automations are very much rooted in, if this happens, then this happens. When I leave my house, turn the lights off. And it's very simple. Obviously, AI is opening up so many more doors. It's much more flexible logic. It's essentially a brain of itself that can make sense of things. Talk to us about how AI factors into all the stuff that you're doing, because it is that flexibility that's allowing so many different things to work together now.
Absolutely. So one aspect of working in what I consider high trust workflows is that the trust is paramount to adoption. And so the way that Meshly is approaching this is our starting point, our entry point into the market is a contract intelligence engine. There's no integrations, no field mapping. and flags or risk and compliance gaps are identified before they cascade down to other teams. Now, the way Meshly is able to do this is part AI and part data schema, not AI, which is actually what builds trust with early users, interestingly enough. So where the AI comes in and where language models are really impressive is pattern recognition and quick learning. So the more contracts that our engine views and more fields it becomes exposed to, the better it becomes at allowing people to upload all sorts of messy contracts without having to do some of that field mapping. That really is what almost makes some solutions not worth the squeeze, if that makes sense, because you spend so much time implementing that it really makes it not worth the effort. And that's why a lot of people move on to manual. Now, our longer arc is to become that real-time trust layer across your systems by unifying and rectifying those fragmented inputs. And so when it comes to the platform, we will leverage AI not only to identify, but also to provide teams with agents that can help rectify on your behalf.
Sandra, it's so interesting hearing you say that, because it's obviously I'm a little bit biased in the fact that I talk to entrepreneurs for a living, and we feature incredible entrepreneurs in all different industries. But from my perspective, everybody these days, listeners included, want to talk about AI, but you've called out the fact that data schema, understanding that architecture, that is incredibly important. It's not as sexy, admittedly, as just talking about AI and all the powers of that. Why is that such an integral part of this? And importantly, I want to get into the conversations you have with real life businesses. What is it about that conversation that makes them sit back and go, Sandra, you get it, that's actually more what we're interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started approaching this problem, of course, AI, being out here in the Bay Area, and if you just read anything online, it's like the AI revolution. But as I started looking at where LLM models really work and where they don't, folks that just implement AI in a vacuum of looking at the workflows that exist and in a vacuum of making sure that the inputs you're putting into any tool that's powered by AI are going to get disappointing results. And so I'd like to say that in the age of AI, one thing's for sure, you can actually get to the wrong answer faster. And what I mean by that is if you put dirty inputs upstream of the AI solution, you're going to get really wonky, not valuable output from that system. And so knowing that and starting to talk to operators, at this point, we've spoken to over 70 revenue and finance operators in the last quarter alone. And what I keep hearing is, I go back to the system of record, which is the contract. I only trust AI as far as I can throw it. And so that was kind of a light bulb moment for me as I was thinking about how to roll out, how to develop, but also how to bring folks on board to Meshly.
Yeah, it's such an interesting perspective and really valuable in a world where everyone's chasing these shiny objects. And I love the fact that you've put the reps in. You've talked to so many of these leaders inside of the businesses and heard their real life dilemmas, which it should make sense to all of us the second we hear that from you, in the fact that we all know ChatGPT. We all know every large language model loves to hallucinate. And you're talking about very sensitive information. You're not sensitive in the fact that, it's medical information that can't get out there publicly, but sensitive in the fact that if Meshly doesn't catch something, if someone else doesn't catch something along the way, we're setting our businesses up for failure. We're setting our revenue collection up for failure, which these are important things. Talk to us more about that trust. And I'd really love to get some real life use cases of what are some of those things, the red flags that come up in these reviews of contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. So right now with Meshly Validate, you are able to do a batch upload. So we can ingest your contracts in batch. And then we set by default, there's a set of, it's called ASC 606 for revenue recognition, which includes things like, is it a signed contract? Is there a start and end date, right? Like the basics. On top of that, you can set company specific rules, such as you require purchase order for your contracts. And so let's hit upon that one. So a real life use case is that oftentimes, sales reps are so busy closing the deal, and the deal gets closed, contract gets generated, executed, and then the billing team eventually tries to send out an invoice. And 2 to 3 months later, they're like, oh my gosh, this customer's not paying. Come to find out that that customer requires a purchase order in order to issue payment. So now finance team has to go back to the sales rep has to go back to their champion and almost do this whole thing backwards. There's a lot of teams that have established like required in Salesforce or HubSpot, like, have you submitted PO? But we all know humans, they can get around rules. So with Meshly, what one of our early users is doing is that they are in bulk identifying before the invoice is even sent out if certain contracts are missing a purchase order, because they know the likelihood for payment goes down significantly. And so with Meshly, they're able to tackle that and route it back to the right salespeople or deal desk to handle pre-invoice even getting sent out.
Sandra, as a visual learner, I really like the way you talk about these things because you use the word upstream. And even when you're getting into these explanations, you're painting the picture of all the different players in this ecosystem that you're right. In so many businesses, it is in a silo, especially, I would argue, the bigger the business is, the more siloed that business probably is. Lay out that whole landscape for us, because when you talk about upstream stuff, it's easy to focus in on the problem. Let's just call it invoicing without recognizing how many of these things are interlayered with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So, if we begin at, for sake of simplicity, pre-signature. So in most typical companies, even let's say smaller startups, there could be a set of rules, right? Like you require a contract, you require that executed. And a simple scenario where things start to break down is in a deal cycle, there could be multiple quotes. The ultimate quote that gets sent through whatever tool you use, DocuSign, etc., might not reflect the most current fields that your sales rep has put in Salesforce. Hopefully it does, but it won't always. So right there, your CRM starts to have one set of information and your contract has another set of information. So then that moves down the stream to the next team. And let's call that your finance team for simplicity's sake. So that finance team will 9 times out of 10, I bet, not even look at Salesforce data because they assume it's incorrect. So they'll look at the contract. What most of these teams are doing is they're actually copying and pasting some of these key contract fields into an Excel sheet. So now that data lives in Excel. And with that Excel sheet, they might upload it into a billing system to then translate into an invoice. And so throughout all those handoffs, there's an opportunity for error, but also that's a lot of tedious work where team members are spending time, I would say, in workflows that are not high impact.
Sandra, you clearly have such a really crucial grasp of this problem at every step of the way. So I guess this is switching gears a little bit and talking specifically about you as the founder, not necessarily Meshly the product, but what made you, obviously you feel strongly about this stuff, but a lot of people feel strongly about problems. What made you feel strongly enough to say, I'm going to build a solution. I'm going to actually bring something to market to fix this for people? Because you didn't just think about it. And I want to give huge kudos, Sandra, to you. And honestly, this is why I love entrepreneurs. You're actually doing something about it. What did that look like to make that decision?
I think there was a lot of frustration, to be honest. So I've sat on the side adjacent to the roles that I'm trying to serve, right? I'm trying to serve classically the CFO, VP of finance, controllers, head of corporate accounting. And my team would get pinged end of month, end of quarter for deal explanations. And I ran a very tight, even if there was a deal desk, I had like an internal deal desk before it went to the official deal desk team. And what I would notice is that I'd get a lot of questions that felt like the answer should already be somewhere. And then the further I moved up in my career and, eventually was reporting to C-suite, the impact of these disconnected dots became even more visible. Preparing for a board meeting became a marathon, and not because we were preparing on the strategy side, which I would say we should have been more so, but it was like getting the right numbers to understand the business. And so I think at that point, it really clicked for me that it wasn't just about tedious work or manual disconnects, but it was really about business owners not having a grasp on their business. And that felt like a disservice to businesses that had really interesting and impactful technology. But it also was a disservice to the customers that we were serving, because we were spending so many cycles on trying to clean up invoices or trying to rectify, contracts and so forth. And so I think it was a level like frustration, but knowing personally how it was something that moved from like paper cut annoyance to like, oh wow, this has an impact on business visibility and business planning.
Yeah, you specifically use the word disservice there, and I'll tell you what, I am fully on board. I think all of us in our own industries, we need to start calling out the disservice that it is if we don't master these elements. I, as a lifelong marketer, I started my first business when I was 19. I've always argued with entrepreneurs that it is your obligation to get good at marketing if you have an amazing product or service, because if you're not good at marketing, then you're never going to serve the people that you actually care about. And so I love how strongly you feel about that, especially when you talk about these numbers. And we all, as business owners, are doing our customers or potential customers a disservice if we don't know the numbers, if we don't dive into them. But Sandra, when I look at your business, I'm looking at a number that's hard for me to put my finger on when we talk about not how much revenue I'm making, but how much revenue I'm leaking, how much revenue I'm not collecting. How the heck do we begin to get our eyes on that metric?
Absolutely. So I think start small. I always like to demystify things. So one tactic a mentor of mine taught me a long time ago, and this was when I was working at a large enterprise, was like when you're dealing with executives and you want to solve a problem for them, they're very overwhelmed, don't have time. So suggest a pilot. And so I love that mentality. And so it's like start small and see how many invoices are not being paid on time, and then start diagnosing what's the issue. Is it a customer issue? Is it an internal issue where clarification or invoice had to get reissued multiple times? The other element or pilot I would try is how many times are you as a business owner, if you have a revenue leader and you have a finance leader, feeling like you're the referee between both of those because they each have their own data set. And so maybe the revenue leader lives in future or forecasted bookings, which is totally okay. And the finance leader lives in actual revenue numbers. But if you're feeling as a business leader that you're the referee between them because their data sets are so different, that is a good indicator that there's something not quite lining up, and you're going to be leading the business with divergent inputs, and you really need to start addressing that.
Yeah, and hearing you talk about these things, it's so clear to me how strategic and intentional your mindset is around all of these things. So I want to talk about Meshly head on. Clearly, you're starting with Meshly Validate, which you've walked us through how that functions. But that also suggests to me that you already know what's coming down the pipeline.
Yes.
What does that growth roadmap look like for you?
Absolutely. So one of the learnings I had this summer, so before I, quit my job, kind of imploded my life in a good way to start this venture, I wanted to build something that was, and that's why our octopus is our logo, like an all-knowing, intelligent, real-time platform. And that platform's goal is to unify your core systems, and so run across them horizontally in service of really that finance persona. And so we want to deliver traceable, audible, reliable data inputs so that ultimately whatever billing system that your finance team uses, they are not having to spend work cleaning up the inputs upstream. So that's the ultimate goal. And so the way we get there, the next stepping stone is expanding into the platform, which is called Meshly Intelligence. And we're currently, looking to work with early design partners that will help shape that. And our goal is to have V1 of Meshly Intelligence out by Q1 of next year. So we're moving aggressive. We've already started laying out the foundations for that. And a lot of our operator conversations have been instrumental to really letting us know like the market pull is there for a real-time system that acts as a Google Translate for your finance and go-to-market systems.
Yeah, I love me some good analogies, and the fact that you can share those with us to really deepen our understanding of it. What I'm super curious about, and this is just the business geek in me, I always love having these conversations with fellow founders, is what's the push-pull when you're in these conversations with stakeholders as your prospective clients? Because I always think about the catalyst for someone to say, oh, I'm going to talk to this person, or I'm going to look for a solution here. Is this something that businesses are already aware of and it's an easy conversation for you to enter? Or is education part of the name of the game and when you're walking into and talking to people like this?
So folks are very aware of the problem. So the good news there is I don't need to convince them that their teams are spending too much time on manual work. What folks are a little skeptical of, and this has really influenced our sequencing and how we built in AI and how we describe that we're using AI, is on unleashing and letting go of a manual process that they hold near and dear and saying, okay, I'm going to hand that over to this unknown technology and then not have to repeat the work. And so our goal and our approach has been with Meshly Validate is that it is a no integration, low effort entry point that it'll take people from the discomfort of the unknown to something known, help them build brand recognition and a positive experience association with Meshly, which will then be the stepping stone for us earning the right to access to their broader data set and hooking them into the platform.
Sandra, it's so interesting to hear you talk about the fact that sometimes they're a bit slower to let go of that manual work. This is a turning point. I think that we all are alive and we're all doing business at a very interesting time that 10 years from now, 100%, we're all going to be on board with AI in so many ways that we don't even recognize or foresee today. Talk to us about that transition though, because you're pushing the envelope there. You're helping them to start let go of those. What's your attitude towards it? How do you encourage them to do that? Obviously, the low-hanging fruit way, I love the fact that low obligation, low integration, I love your approach there, but part of it, I'm guessing, is also just mindset for you to help them with.
It is. I think this also comes a little bit to, there's this thing out there called founder market fit. So I think for me, what I didn't realize till I embarked on this journey was really the depth and breadth of my own network. And I think what really helped with that was the fact that I've worked at unicorn startups, but also large enterprises. And so one strategy that I think I picked up from LinkedIn, to be honest, was for every call that you have with someone in your network, ask for, do you know one really smart finance operator who you've worked with in the past? And that really, at least through now, has gotten us to those 70, conversations, really high quality, persona specific conversations. Beyond that, really what I've seen to rip people away from their manual, it's a little bit of that psychology. So one quick example is initially Meshly Validate gave you the results in app. And it was relatively beautiful. And our first design partners were like, this is great, but I want this in a CSV. And I was like, wait, you want to go back to Excel? They're like, we will always live in Excel. I was like, okay. And so I think listening to prospects and to customers and to identifying where that emotional, psychological safety zone is, and then saying, you know what, I can give them an audit ready CSV and still automate and use AI for 90% of that process. And so you have to kind of give and take. And that's one of those examples where the conversation is an opportunity for me to listen and really listen with empathy and learn.
Yeah, and not only that, but I'm willing to bet that a lot of it is you're also listening from your lived experience. The fact that for the past decade, you were inside these places, you've seen it firsthand. So it's not just you gaining it from someone telling you about it. You've actually experienced that, and that is one of your superpowers as an entrepreneur. It makes me want to put you on the spot here, Sandra, and ask you this question. I know you're totally not prepped for this, but a large part of your business is solving those problems that you firsthand witnessed in your professional career. So I want to ask you, what are some of those things that you looked at your corporate career and you said, no, I want to do these differently inside of my own business? And then alternatively, what are some of those things that you say, hey, I really like how we operated in this way. I do want to implement that into the culture of the business that I'm creating.
I think I'll start with the positive first. So one of the things that I've seen from really strong, long-lasting founders is I think founders often, and it's natural, like I'm in this struggle bus myself, so I'm not trying to claim that, I'm better than this, relinquish sales much too early. And what I mean by that is like the best founders I've ever worked with are truly sales, founder-led sales, even beyond hiring their VP of sales. And what that forces you to do, it forces you to stay engaged in those customer conversations, in those prospect conversations, because product market fit, I don't believe it's like a one and done. It's something that you have to iterate on. It's something that you have to stay close to. Same with pricing and packaging. Like that's an element of it, right? Like I've also been part of companies where they fail because they have your traditional product market fit, but they don't have pricing market fit and they're unwilling to listen. In a lot of those cases, they were unwilling to listen because the founder wasn't close enough to the customers or prospects. And so I guess that's both a positive and a negative. And so I've been part of experiences actually where the founder was, the lead of sales unceremoniously well beyond the needed period. And then times where a founder wasn't. And that's been my own personal learning. Like even once I'm ready for a VP of sales, like I will still be very much embedded in prospect and customer conversations.
Yes, I love that, especially in a world where so many of us drag our feet, that we love what we do, the actual scope of the work that we do with our businesses. Not everybody loves sales. And Sandra, you clearly do sales. Yeah, and you're clearly viewing it as more than just sales. You're viewing it as those conversations. Even multiple times in our conversation today, you've gleaned insights from those, people could call it sales conversations, but you're just viewing it as understanding so much more about your customers. That's going to factor into the way you develop your product. It's going to factor into your marketing. And of course, it's going to do a world of wonder when it comes to sales because you firsthand understand their experiences. So I love those insights. You've dropped so many nuggets of knowledge here today that I don't know how you're going to answer this final question, but that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you're one of us, you're an entrepreneur yourself, what's that one thing you want to leave them with today?
I think if you have that itch to build, there's never going to be a right time. There's definitely worse times, but there's never going to be a right time. And so what's really helped me, among a few things that we did to get our family ready to be able to take on this journey, was giving myself the permission to say, like, okay, what is the worst that can happen? And that really helped me like get rid of any residual fear that I had. It doesn't mean I don't have like existential crises like every week, but that really has helped me propel forward at every step where I'm like, what am I doing here, right? Like, this is crazy. Why am I the right person to do that? And so every time I kind of encounter one of those points of like losing confidence in myself, I'm just like, what is the worst thing that can happen? And there's never going to be a right time to tackle this.
Boom. Yes. One of my favorite Chinese proverbs ever. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now. And it's so much of the entrepreneurial mindset is this mindset stuff. And Sandra, you've totally delivered in that way as well. Not only strategically and tactically with what you're doing with Meshly, but I love how much you embrace and step into that entrepreneurial mindset, the personal development side of things, because you're right. We all do have, you said maybe they're not existential crises, but they certainly feel like them in the moment. So I'm so grateful for your advice there. I'm also excited for listeners to check out all the cool stuff that you're up to. I know that you've got a lot of exciting things coming in the month of October and certainly beyond. You obviously have an incredible growth roadmap that's coming up. I've personally loved seeing all the posts that you're making on the Meshly LinkedIn page. So along those lines, for listeners that want to find you online, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
So our website has a lot of the good content that we're producing here. So www.meshly.ai, and then also give us a follow on LinkedIn. We play around with some memes and are having fun over there trying to figure out our voice and content strategy.
Heck yes, and listeners, you already know the drill. We're making it as easy as possible for you to find those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. If Sandra and her team are not hitting you up with memes, then you're going to find some cold-hitting hard facts and stats that are really going to make you take a step back and look at your business, your finances, your revenue, and of course that revenue leakage that we've talked about today. So much good content out there. If you're on the go, don't worry, come back to this episode and click right through from the show notes. Otherwise, Sandra, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do.